Picture this. Novgorod, January 1570. The temperature is 20 below zero, but the Volkhov River runs red and steaming. It's not flowing, it's clogged with bodies. So many bodies that survivors must break the ice downstream to drink. The ancient city of golden domes and merchant princes is dying, and its death is orchestrated with theatrical precision. You're hiding in the bell tower of St. Sophia Cathedral, watching through frost-covered windows as black-clad riders herd naked women across the frozen marketplace. These are the Oprichniki, Ivan the Terrible's personal army of darkness. They wear black robes over their armor, carry dogs' heads on their saddles and brooms at their belts, the heads to sniff out treason, the brooms to sweep it away. Then you see him, Ivan IV Vasilievich, Tsar of all Russias, rides into the square on a black horse. He's 40 years old but looks ancient, his hair gone white, his back hunched, his eyes burning with religious madness. He dismounts and walks among the naked women freezing in the snow. He selects them like cattle, pointing with his iron-tipped staff, some for himself, some for his son, some for his men. The rest, mothers, grandmothers, children, are tied to sleighs and dragged to the river. At the river, a massive hole has been cut in the ice. Whole families are pushed in. But here's what makes Ivan different from other tyrants. He's made it a game. Mothers must choose which child to save. Husbands must decide whether to save their wives or daughters. Those who refuse to choose are raped on the ice before being thrown in. Those who choose must live with their choice. The German mercenary Heinrich von Staden, serving in Ivan's guard, will later write, "The Tsar sat upon his horse and watched as though at a play, calling out scores like a gaming match. Welcome to the Hollow Throne. I'm your host, and today we descend into the frozen hell of Ivan the Terrible's Russia, where sexual violence became sacrament and rape became religious ritual." Content warning and thesis. This episode contains explicit discussions of systematic rape, sexual torture, forced incest, and the weaponization of Orthodox Christianity to justify sexual violence. We'll examine historical accounts of mass sexual assault, the rape of nuns, and torture methods that fused religious symbolism with sexual sadism. This content is extremely disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Ivan the Terrible ruled Russia from 1547 to 1584, 37 years, that transformed the nation from a medieval principality into an empire built on terror. But this isn't just another story of a cruel Tsar. This is about how sexual violence became state policy, how rape was transformed into religious ritual, and how one man's fusion of piety and perversion created a unique form of theocratic sexual terror. The historical sources, Heinrich von Staden's accounts, Prince Kurbsky's letters, the Piskarevsky Chronicle, and foreign ambassadors' reports paint a picture that challenges comprehension. This was a ruler who raped nuns while quoting scripture, who created an army of monk rapists, who turned convents into brothels while wearing a monk's cowl himself. What makes Ivan's story essential is that he represents the ultimate corruption of religious authority, using God to justify the most ungodly acts. His reign demonstrates how sexual violence, when sanctified by religious authority, becomes even more destructive than secular tyranny. The Orphaned Prince. Picture this. The Moscow Kremlin, December 1530. 3-year-old Ivan stands beside his father's deathbed as Grand Prince Vasily III dies of blood poisoning. The child doesn't understand death yet, but he understands the wolves circling. The boyar nobles who bow to him already plot his murder. His mother, Elena Glinskaya, rules as regent for 5 years, protecting her son through a combination of intelligence and brutality. But in 1538, when Ivan is 8, she dies suddenly, almost certainly poisoned. Ivan will later write, "My brother Yuri and I were treated like vagrants and children of the poorest. We were ill-clothed, hungry, and cold, but the trauma went deeper than neglect. The boyars turned the palace into their playground. They fornicated in the throne room. They brought prostitutes to state dinners. The Shuisky family, who seized power, would rape servants in front of the boy prince to demonstrate their dominance." Ivan watched, learned, and remembered every face. Dr. Richard Helly, historian of Russian psychology, notes, Ivan's childhood was a masterclass in power through sexual violence. He learned that rape wasn't just about sex, it was about demonstrating who could violate whom without consequence. This lesson would define his entire reign. The First Blood. December 29, 1543. 13-year-old Ivan commits his first murder. He orders Prince Andrei Shuisky, the man who had humiliated him for years, thrown to the palace dogs. But first he has Shuisky stripped naked and paraded through Moscow. The sexual humiliation precedes the death, a pattern that will define Ivan's reign. At 16, Ivan crowns himself not just Grand Prince but Tsar Caesar of all Russias. His first act, demanding the boyars present their daughters for his inspection. He chooses Anastasia Romanovna, but not before examining hundreds of noble virgins. The German ambassador Herberstein writes, "The maidens were brought naked before him, and he tested them like a horse trader tests mares." For 13 years, Anastasia's influence keeps Ivan's worst impulses in check. He conquers Kazan and Astrakhan, expands Russia, and reforms law codes. But when she dies in 1560, likely poisoned by boyars, the last restraint on Ivan's nature dies with her. The death of Anastasia. August 7, 1560. Anastasia dies after a lingering illness. Ivan, convinced she was poisoned, begins his transformation from harsh ruler to sexual terrorist. He orders the suspected boyars tortured, but not just physically. He forces them to watch as their wives are raped by his guards, their daughters distributed among his men. Prince Kurbsky, Ivan's former friend who fled to Lithuania, writes, "After the Tsarina's death, he fell into such beastliness that he took to violating virgins and then giving them to his soldiers, saying this was their communion with the body of the state." Ivan's second wife, Maria Temryukovna, a Circassian princess, allegedly encouraged his sadistic tendencies. Contemporary accounts suggest she participated in his tortures, particularly of women. Together, they would devise new methods of sexual torture, combining Circassian and Russian traditions of cruelty. The birth of the Oprich Nina. December 1564. Ivan suddenly leaves Moscow, claiming the boyar's treachery forces him to abdicate. The city panics. Delegates beg his return. He agrees with conditions. He will create the Oprich Nina, a state within a state, answerable only to him. Its members, the Oprichniki, will be his personal army of 6,000 warrior monks. The Oprichniki dress in black like monks, but their monastery is hell. Heinrich von Staden, who joined them, describes their initiation. New brothers had to prove their loyalty by raping a boyar's wife or daughter while reciting psalms. This showed they placed God's anointed Tsar above earthly bonds. Ivan creates a mock monastery at Alexandrov Sloboda, where he serves as abbot to his Oprichniki brothers. The daily routine: morning prayers at 4 a.m., torture sessions at 10 a.m., communal rape of prisoners at noon, vespers at 6 p.m. The German adventurer Albert Schlichting reports, "The Tsar believed suffering brought victims closer to God, and carnal violation prepared souls for divine receipt. The Oprichniki operate with complete impunity. They can take any woman, enter any home, confiscate any property. Their dog's head symbol means they're the Tsar's dogs, sniffing out treason. The broom means they sweep away enemies. But in practice, they're state-sponsored rapists with theological justification." The Novgorod Massacre. Picture this. January 2nd, 1570. Ivan arrives at Novgorod with 15,000 Oprichniki. The city of 30,000 has been accused of treason, planning to defect to Lithuania. The evidence: a forged letter Ivan probably wrote himself. But evidence doesn't matter. Novgorod's real crime is being rich while Ivan needs money. For 5 weeks, Ivan turns Novgorod into hell on earth. The Piskarevsky Chronicle records, every day 1,000 to 1,500 people were thrown into the Volkhov River, men, women and children. Those who tried to swim were pushed under with poles, axes and spears. But the killing was preceded by systematic rape. Ivan established a procedure. First, prominent families were arrested. The men were tortured to reveal hidden wealth. The women were stripped and examined for marks of treason on their bodies. Young women and girls were distributed among the Oprichniki for interrogation. The Archbishop Paiman was special. Ivan had him sewn into a bearskin and hunted with dogs. But first he forced Paiman to watch as every nun in Novgorod's convents was raped. Ivan personally participated, declaring he was planting the seed of new faith in the Sisters of Christ. Heinrich von Staden describes one scene. The Tsar had a large pan made like a sleigh. Naked women were tied to it and dragged through the streets to the river. The Tsar followed, striking them with his staff, asking if they felt the Holy Spirit entering them. Those who said yes were raped again. Those who said no were drowned immediately. Modern historians estimate 15,000, 20,000 died in Novgorod. The first Pskov Chronicle states, men, women and children, monks, nuns and priests, were all equally subjected to the Tsar's rage. Some were roasted over slow fires, others were flayed alive. Many were impaled, not through the torso but through their private parts. The convent raids. Ivan developed a particular obsession with convents. He saw them as hotbeds of sexual frustration that needed liberation. Between 1567 and 1572, he systematically raided every major convent in his territory. His theological justification: nuns were brides of Christ, and as God's anointed representative, he had conjugal rights. The Ascension Convent in Moscow, December 1568. Ivan arrives with 500 Oprichniki for inspection. The abbess, Mother Evdokia, is stripped and examined for bodily heresy. Finding none, Ivan declares she's hiding it internally. What follows is 12 hours of systematic rape of every nun, with Ivan insisting they thank God for their blessing during the act. Prince Kurbsky writes, "The tyrant would quote scripture while defiling holy women. 'Be fruitful and multiply,' he would say while raping nuns. 'This is my body given for you,' he would proclaim while forcing himself upon abbesses." But Ivan's most elaborate convent atrocity occurred at the Pskov Caves monastery in 1570. He had the monks and nuns forced to marry each other in a mock ceremony, then made them consummate these marriages publicly, while he delivered a sermon on the sanctity of matrimony. Those who refused were buried alive in the monastery walls. The Swedish diplomat Peter Petraeus recorded, "He would visit convents as a pilgrim, then reveal himself and demand the nuns dance naked for him, saying David danced before the Lord. Those who pleased him were kept for his pleasure. Those who didn't were given to his soldiers or his dogs, literally to his dogs." The family destructions. Ivan perfected the art of destroying families through sexual violence. He understood that rape wasn't just physical violation, it was social death in Orthodox Russia. A raped woman couldn't marry. A husband with a raped wife was dishonored. Children who witnessed their parents' violation were psychologically destroyed. The case of Prince Ivan Chelyadnin, 1568, accused of treason, Chelyadnin was forced to watch as his wife was raped by 100 oprichniki. His teenage daughters were given to Ivan's kennelmaster. His young sons were castrated and made to serve as cupbearers at the feast celebrating their father's execution. The family line was ended in a single day, but Ivan's cruelest family destruction involved forced incest. The boy Fedor Basmanov was accused of hiding wealth. Ivan's sentence: Basmanov must publicly rape his own son Alexei to prove his loyalty exceeded family bonds. When Basmanov refused, Ivan had Alexei rape his father instead, then executed both for unnatural acts. The diplomat Jerome Horsey writes, "The Tsar delighted in making fathers deflower their daughters. Mothers lie with sons, brothers with sisters, saying if they truly loved their Tsar more than family, they would obey. Those who complied were killed for incest. Those who refused were killed for treason." Dr. Nancy Shields Coleman, studying Ivan's sexual violence, notes, Ivan weaponized Orthodox concepts of ritual purity. In Russian Orthodoxy, sexual pollution required extensive purification. By systematically polluting the nobility, Ivan created a spiritually broken aristocracy who believed themselves damned and therefore had nothing left to lose but their lives. The Alexandrov Sloboda horror. Alexandrov Sloboda, Ivan's private kingdom 75 miles from Moscow, was where his darkest fantasies became reality. Built as a fortress monastery, it was actually a theater of sexual horror. Here Ivan lived as a mock abbot with 300 oprichniki monks who followed a strict routine of prayer and rape. The daily schedule, according to Heinrich von Staden: 4 a.m. matins, morning prayers; 8 a.m. torture of prisoners; 12 p.m. mass rape of female prisoners during lunch; 3 p.m. Ivan's personal interrogations; 6 p.m. vespers with mandatory attendance; 10 p.m. night orgies in the refectory. The German mercenary describes one entertainment: the Tsar would have noble women brought naked into the church, tie them to the altar, and violate them while singing hymns. He said he was consecrating them as sacrifices to God. His son Ivan participated eagerly. His younger son Fyodor would weep and pray. It was here that Ivan kept his victims for extended torture. Maria Dolgorukaya, his sixth wife, lasted only 2 weeks before being drowned for not being a virgin. But those 2 weeks were documented by survivors. She was repeatedly raped while being forced to recite prayers, with Ivan insisting she thank God for each violation. The English diplomat Jerome Horsey, who visited Alexandrov Sloboda, writes, "The Tsar had constructed ingenious devices, chairs with iron spikes positioned to penetrate women during interrogation, beds that slowly pulled victims apart while he violated them, a bronze bull where pregnant women were roasted alive, their screams sounding like the beasts bellowing." The death of his son. November 15, 1581, the event that finally broke Ivan's mind completely. His son Ivanovich had become too much like his father, cruel, violent, rapacious. But when the son criticized the father's treatment of his pregnant wife, Ivan struck him with his iron-pointed staff. But the backstory reveals the sexual horror. Ivan had entered his son's chambers and found his daughter-in-law, Yelena Sheremeteva, wearing only a single layer of clothing, improper by Russian standards. The Tsar attempted to discipline her, likely rape her. Ivan Ivanovich intervened. The father struck the son. The blow was fatal. For 3 days the son lay dying while Ivan alternated between grief and continued depravity. Jerome Horsey reports, even as his son lay dying, the Tsar brought women to violate in the adjacent chamber, saying he was creating new life to replace what was lost. The dying prince could hear everything. After his son's death, Ivan's sexual violence became completely unhinged. He would rape women on his son's tomb. He married 2 more times Maria Nagaya, and then attempted to marry Mary Hastings, an English noblewoman. She wisely declined. Each wife faced sexual torture that courtiers could only hint at in their accounts. The English merchant Jerome Horsey describes Ivan's last years. He kept a harem of women who were brought to him daily. His body was swollen with disease, covered in boils, stinking of rot. Yet he continued his violations, often dyeing women who had been poisoned so he could experience their death throes during the act. The body rebels. By 1584, Ivan's body was destroying itself. Modern analysis of his remains shows massive mercury poisoning. He had been taking mercury for syphilis. His bones show evidence of extreme arthritis. Contemporary accounts describe a body covered in boils, swollen testicles, and a stench that cleared rooms. But even dying, Ivan remained dangerous. Dutch merchant Isaac Massa reports, the Tsar had young girls brought to warm his bed, believing virgin blood would cure him. When they failed to heal him, he had them strangled with their own hair, saying they were witches who prevented his recovery. March 17, 1584. Ivan demands to see his treasury, particularly the gems. He points to diamonds, saying they preserve chastity. He touches emeralds, claiming they predict death by changing color. Then he calls for his chess set. As he sets up the pieces, he collapses. Death comes for the terrible. March 18, 1584, 3 p.m. Ivan dies while setting up chess pieces. Some say it was a stroke, others suggest poison. Bogdan Belsky, his closest advisor, may have suffocated him. His last words, according to different sources, were either "I die" or "the game is finished." The reaction was telling. No one tried to save him. Courtiers stood frozen, afraid it might be another test of loyalty. Only when his body began to cool did they believe the monster was dead. Church bells rang, officially for mourning, but witnesses described dancing in the streets. Jerome Horsey writes, when confirmed dead, women who had hidden for years emerged. Families separated by terror reunited, but many could not celebrate. They had been too broken. The damage was done. The terrible legacy. The numbers are staggering. Novgorod, 15,000 dead in 5 weeks. Total Oprichnina victims, 50,000, 80,000. Noble families exterminated, over 100 bloodlines ended. Convents destroyed, dozens, with thousands of nuns violated. Overall population decline. Some regions lost 70% of inhabitants. Modern archaeology confirms the chronicles. Mass graves around Novgorod contain thousands of skeletons showing signs of torture. Convent sites reveal hasty burials of young women. The Alexandrov Sloboda excavations uncovered torture chambers exactly as described by Heinrich von Staden. The time of troubles. Ivan's reign of sexual terror left Russia psychologically shattered. His son Fyodor, mentally disabled and traumatized by witnessing his father's acts, ruled weakly until 1598. Then came the time of troubles. 15 years of civil war, foreign invasion, and pretenders claiming to be Ivan's murdered sons. The trauma was generational. Noble families destroyed by sexual violence couldn't produce heirs. Convents couldn't recruit nuns. The Orthodox Church, complicit in Ivan's theological rapes, lost moral authority. The Romanov dynasty that eventually emerged had to rebuild not just government but Russian society's basic trust. Historian Janet Martin observes, Ivan created a specific Russian trauma around authority and sexuality. For centuries after, Russian rulers would use sexual violence as state policy, from Peter the Great's forced marriages to Stalin's rape armies. Ivan showed that in Russia, the body politic and the physical body were one. Stalin's echo. Stalin explicitly admired Ivan, calling him a great and wise ruler who was too soft on enemies. The NKVD, Stalin's secret police, studied Ivan's methods. Like the Oprichnina, they used rape as interrogation. Like Ivan, Stalin destroyed families through sexual violence, wives arrested and raped to break husbands, daughters violated to punish fathers. The historian Simon Sebag Montefiore notes, Stalin's systematic use of sexual violence against perceived enemies directly echoed Ivan's methods. Both understood that rape destroys not just individuals but social fabric. Both used it to atomize society, making collective resistance impossible. Even today, Russian forces use systematic rape as warfare, from Afghanistan to Chechnya to Ukraine. The pattern Ivan established, sexual violence blessed by authority, rape as demonstration of power, the fusion of nationalism and sexual domination continues. The psychology of the ocratic sexual violence. Dr. Sarah Johnson's research on the ocratic sexual violence identifies Ivan patterns, using religious language to sanctify rape, claiming divine authority for sexual violence, targeting religious women nuns to demonstrate power over God, forcing victims to thank God during assault, creating theological justifications for perversion, We see these patterns in ISIS's sex slavery justified by selective Quranic interpretation, clerical abuse scandals across denominations, cult leaders claiming sexual access to followers, any system where religious authority enables sexual predation. Professor Michael Anderson concludes, Ivan the Terrible proves that when sexual violence receives religious sanction, it becomes exponentially more destructive. Victims believe they're damned if they resist. Perpetrators believe they're doing God's work. Society loses the moral framework to condemn the violence. The terrible truth. Ivan the Terrible ruled for 37 years. In that time, he transformed Russia from a medieval principality into an empire, and from a society into a slaughterhouse. He created the world's first secret police dedicated to sexual terror. He turned Orthodox Christianity into a rape cult. He made the Russian state synonymous with sexual violence. The numbers matter: 80,000 killed by the Oprichnina, thousands of women raped in convents. Entire noble bloodlines ended through sexual violence. But the true legacy isn't in numbers, it's in the trauma that shaped Russian culture for centuries. Russian historian Dmitry Likachev wrote, Ivan didn't just kill bodies, he killed the Russian soul. He showed that absolute power could make anything permissible, even the rape of nuns while singing hymns. Once a society sees that, it can never fully unsee it. If this historical examination disturbed you, it should. When religious authority enables sexual violence, when God is used to justify rape, we face the ultimate corruption of human society. Subscribe to The Hollow Throne for more unflinching examinations of history's darkest chapters. Hit the notification bell, share this video. These stories matter because the patterns persist. Next week, Caligula's palace, when Rome's emperor became its pimp. Final reflection. Ivan called himself terrible, Grozny in Russian, meaning formidable or awesome in the biblical sense. He wanted to be feared as God is feared. Instead, he proved that when men claim to be God's instruments, they become the devil's hands. The throne is always hollow. When filled by those who claim divine mandate for human horror, it becomes not just empty but damned. Ivan the Terrible died 440 years ago. His methods didn't. Think about that.